Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jayakula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
So we have 3 generations family here today. And I thought it would be a good idea, or maybe not, but I'm going to do it anyway, to talk about family. I often get in trouble with this topic. The reason I get in trouble with it is because it's an area where people have a lot of very definite ideas about things, and then if you say something different, they get upset with you. But in any case, in India, in the various teaching texts and scriptures, you have this idea of varna, V-A-R-N-A. And the varna are natural stages of life that an ordinary human being would go through in order to fulfill all of the functions of life, which are dharma, kama, artha, and moksha. So dharma means your duty or fulfilling what your purpose is in this life. Kama means having some enjoyment along the way. Artha means gathering some wealth and hopefully spreading some wealth around. And moksha means liberation. So in the sort of foundational teachings of all Indian culture and traditions, there's this idea that in order to be fulfilled as a human being, you don't want to exclude any of these. You don't want to exclude dharma, kama, artha, or moksha. You want to express something about your gifts, what you came here with to give away. That's dharma. You want to have some enjoyment of life. You want to gather some wealth, and you want to eventually wake up and discover your real nature, which is self-realization. So the way that it is sort of parsed out, the varnas in the traditional texts, teaching stories of India, is that when you're a young person, you're in school and you're learning from someone, and that's your youth and your young adulthood. And you're supposed to, and it's a time when you generally or supposedly aren't having sex. So they call it brahmacharya, and it's a kind of your training for the rest of your life. And then you have the grihastha period, which is the householder period. And the householder period is where you have some enjoyment and you gather some wealth and you have kids, of course, and you raise them and send them off into the world to, rinse and repeat. So then you have a stage at the end of life where you supposedly, you and your spouse, you're very old now, you've done your duty, you've brought up your kids and sent them off to repeat the cycle. And now you can devote your life to waking up, to liberation, to moksha. And so you're supposed to go into the forest and do that, and spend the rest of your life doing spiritual practices and sadhana. Importance is given to all of these functions. There's no sense that there's anything wrong with any of those different functions that we have as a human life, as human beings, or that there's anything wrong with fulfilling yourself, basically, by living out all of those different functions of human life. Now, in the yogic traditions, there's another teaching which has to do with how you receive teachings that help you to wake up, that help you to eventually attain self-realization. And the teaching about that is that your parents, but even more specifically your mother, is your first guru, your first teacher that instills wisdom in you, that gives you wisdom. And the reason why it's the mother more than the father, well, on a sociological level, we could just say that the mothers were taking care of the kids more than the fathers were. But there's also teachings that women have more of a possibility to self-realize, that they're less caught up in the distractions that take us away from waking up. So that's a factor also. But every family, in ancient times anyway, of a certain class would have a family guru in addition to the parents, someone that they made offerings to and went to for advice, sort of like the neighborhood priest and all that. And for many people, that was really just what you had. You had your parents and you had your family guru, and you did your thing, and that was the end. Then you did a little bit of sadhana, spiritual practice, and did your pujas when you were supposed to do your pujas and stuff, and that was it. And that's still it for a lot of people. If you are somehow inspired to tread on a more conscious spiritual path in one of these traditions from Tibet or India or China or Nepal or Sikh, all of those places where these traditions are from. So if in this particular lifetime you are inspired to do that, then there's other teachings that come into play. And here's where people get upset with me. But let me just preface this by saying that think of those of you who have ever encountered any great spiritual teacher, or even just the Dalai Lama. Most people, even if you have absolutely no interest, even if you're an atheist or whatever, you still look at the Dalai Lama and you get a nice warm fuzzy feeling. And why? Why do you get a nice warm fuzzy feeling about the Dalai Lama? I would say, and you can disagree with me, feel free to disagree. I would say that it's because you have the sense or the experience that he loves everyone, that he has a kind and friendly feeling toward everyone. If the Dalai Lama were going all over the world telling you about how much he loved his grandchildren and his nieces and nephews, you would be bored. It wouldn't be all that interesting, right? The reason why people who have some spiritual attainment move us is because they show us how the virtues that we express in interpersonal relationships and family life, like caring and kindness and mutual concern and mutual support and love for each other, those spiritually adept people show us how those same virtues have a lot more legs than we give them credit for, and that we actually could feel that way about everyone, that is a human possibility. I was reading some quote by somebody yesterday, I don't know who it was, because, Facebook, and just goes, wait, what? Who said that? So I'm sure it was someone terribly famous, but anyway, somebody said, if one person can achieve one virtue or one bit of wisdom or can attain some sort of, enlightened or self-realized condition in any way, only one person, then we know everyone has that possibility. Because then we know a human being could do that. And so and this, of course, is one of the great functions of spiritual teachers, to let you know that a human being could do whatever it is that the teacher is doing. Right? So even if we have no interest in spiritual practice, or especially if we do, when we see people who can express our own virtue in a much bigger way, we are moved. Right? We're moved by that. And some of us, some subset of us, want to be that way ourselves. And those are the people that embark on a spiritual path. So the end point, or what we could call self-realization, is that you feel as you do for family for everyone, that you feel concern and intimacy with everyone, that you want the best for everyone. This is the direction that we're heading in. And Anandamayi said that being with your spiritual family is a very special kind of joy, because that family is trying to be family to everyone. They're trying to realize within themselves the open-heartedness to love everyone, and in fact, with total equality. Doesn't mean that you relate to everyone the same. You relate to everyone uniquely and skillfully. But in your heart of hearts, you have nothing but a feeling of kindness and generosity and friendliness towards everyone. So for some people, and very few people, this means that your relationships to your birth families change. And that just happens naturally after a very long time of practice, because your concepts about what is family and what is intimacy and who you should be intimate with change. Your heart opens in a very profound way, and you simply experience people differently. And this is the part that sometimes traumatizes people. But it's only traumatic because we're very attached to our particular relationships and our particular families and our concepts and ideas about those particular relationships and families. And because we have those attachments, we suffer. If one person, leaves us or treats us in a way we don't like or doesn't respect us, and that one person happens to be the person we've defined as integral to our well-being, then we have terrible suffering happen. So eventually what you realize is that when the heart is not fully open and we are only sharing our intimacy and relational energy with a few people, that actually leads to suffering. The very thing that we think is going to solve all of our suffering and save us from loneliness, which it does temporarily, and maybe even by temporarily, I mean lifetimes on end. But eventually we discover that the attachments to people that we felt were our lifeblood and absolutely essential to our happiness and existence, and actually the solution to the problem of loneliness and a feeling of separation, we actually find that those attachments are causing us suffering. And that only realizing our innate primordial intimacy with everyone can actually solve the problem of our loneliness. You eventually just realize that naturally. It's not a concept, it just dawns on you by dipping enough in the pool of presence. So there's no rejection of family in this tradition. And in fact, there's a celebration of the householder life. And this tradition is all householder teachers. There is no monastic side of this tradition. Some modern people who were more impacted by the conservatism and religiosity of mainstream Hindu culture, they invented some monastic situations that they call tantric monasteries or something. But this is all just not really part of the tradition at all. So the tradition really honors family life and actually supports anybody to do whatever they need to do to live through the karma that they have and to end up somewhere where they have fewer concepts that they're holding on to and where their hearts are as open as possible. So when we're in a family, and we actually have some families that are new and just getting started in our community. We have some people who are going to give birth relatively soon, and people starting off their married lives and planning on having children, even if they're not pregnant already. And the very best thing you can do, other than, of course, do your practice every day, no matter what, is to make sure all the windows and doors of your house are open. Make sure that you don't close off your lives and sort of start to embody this concept that once you get into a nuclear family, that's going to solve all of your relational problems, fulfill all of your relational needs. It won't. You may feel that way for a hot minute, but eventually stagnation is going to set in. And I certainly, grew up in a family with a lot of stagnation. And I'm sure a lot of you did too, because that is sort of the American definition of happiness, that we're going to find the one, and then we're going to get the house, and then we're going to hole up in our house. And quite a number of people really cut back on friendships or on making new friends once they get into some family situation, and they stop opening or taking risks to be intimate with more people. when they get into a married situation or a couple situation or whatever configuration it might be. But in any case, the best thing you can do is to remain engaged and participatory in as much life as is appropriate given your circumstance, and to maintain intimacies with others, and to teach your children to do that also. To teach your children that it's okay to be intimate with lots of different people, to not close the doors and windows for them. Many families have some either obvious or subtle family mythos, right? That somehow we're the best, right? This is like the family equivalent of American exceptionalism. Our family's number one, or there's something special about our family, or, oh, you don't want to be in one of those other families. I'm just being silly, but actually people do say stuff like that, and then there's sort of more subtle versions of it that creep into the family culture and family discourse. As spiritual practitioners, you just want to nix any of this from the get-go. This is not helpful to anybody. It's certainly not to your children. So there's many things that we can do when we're in families, when we're in that grihasta period, to begin to look forward to the year, the lifetime, when we are going to be feeling like everyone is in our family. And to instill that in our children also, that to let them know that that's a possibility, at least. Being in a family as a way to be open instead of a way to be closing down, a way to be open together, a way to teach children to be open rather than teaching people to shut doors and windows. And also, if you don't have this already, cultivating and sharing with your children your concern for other people. Many, many people's lives, including most of my students, are largely taken up with self-concern. And then you get into a situation where, especially for young parents of young children, it's very tiring. It takes up a lot of your relational energy and just your energy, period. But try as best you can to remain interested and curious about and caring about other people, not just your friends and family, and sharing your concern with your children. Like if you're reading the newspaper or you go to see a documentary or something, letting your kids know that you care about other people is very, very important. As screwed up as my family was, I have to say they actually instilled that in me. My parents were politically active. They took me to anti-war marches and talked about things like racism, and they let me know that other people were important. That's one of the things I really feel happy that they bequeathed to me.